If you asked me what I was doing on Christmas Eve, I would have told you about the smell of heavy diesel fuel, the biting cold seeping through the concrete floor of my auto shop, and the grease stained permanently into my knuckles. But then the universe decided to deliver a nightmare wrapped in a phone call. I answered a number I did not recognize, and heard my 9-year-old son, Callum, shivering so hard his teeth clicked over the speaker. "Dad, they told me to get out," he sobbed, the sound of howling wind echoing behind him. "Uncle Desmond and Grandma said I am just a burden. They told me to walk in the snow." My blood turned to actual ice. They dumped my little boy at an empty gas station in the middle of a blizzard to go on their luxury ski trip. I dropped my wrench. I did not scream, I did not cry. I felt a dark, violent anger wake up inside me. You want to see what happens when you throw away my world? Keep listening. My name is Gideon. I am a single father, a mechanic who works 80-hour weeks, and up until that freezing December night, I was the fool who kept trying to make my toxic family love my son. I was standing under the chassis of a massive freight truck, fighting a stubborn transmission. The shop was closed for the holidays, but I took this emergency job because the extra cash meant I could finally afford the physical therapy Callum needed for his leg. Since his mother passed away 3 years ago, it has just been the two of us against the world. Callum is a quiet kid, the kind who reads books in the corner and apologizes when someone else bumps into him. He has this gentle soul that makes you want to shield him from every sharp edge in life. Because I had to pull this overnight shift, I made the worst mistake of my life. I dropped him off at my parents' house, Orson and Beatrix. My older brother, Desmond, was supposed to be there too. They were packing for a fancy resort trip the next morning, and they swore up and down, that Callum would be safe and asleep in the guest room while I worked. The phone rang at 11 at night. The screen flashed an unknown number. Usually, I ignore those, figuring it is just some scammer trying to sell me extended car warranties. But it was Christmas Eve. The snow outside was falling so hard it looked like static on a television screen. Something in my gut twisted. I wiped my hands on an oily rag and swiped to answer. "Hello," I said, my voice rough from inhaling exhaust fumes all day. "Dad." The word was so small, so fragile, it barely registered over the wind. "Callum? Buddy, is that you? Why are you calling from a strange number? Are you okay?" There was a hitch of breath, the distinct sound of a child trying desperately to hold back tears and failing. "Dad, it is so cold. I am sorry. I did not mean to ruin their trip." Panic hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I walked out from under the truck, my boots echoing in the empty cavern of the garage. "Ruin what trip? Where are you, Callum? Put Grandma on the phone right now." "They are not here," he whimpered. "I am at a gas station. The lady here let me use her phone." "Dad, they left me." I stopped breathing. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Who left you? Tell me exactly what happened, right now." "Uncle Desmond," Callum cried, the words tumbling out of him in a rushed, terrified stream. "And Grandma and Grandpa. They were all in the SUV. They had all their ski stuff. They stopped at the gas pumps, and Uncle Desmond opened my door. He grabbed my backpack and threw it on the ground. He said I was whining too much about my leg hurting. He said I was ruining the $10,000 vacation vibe. Then Grandma said I was a burden and that I should just walk back to your shop. Then they drove away, Dad. They just drove away." My vision blurred. A loud, ringing sound filled my ears. I gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. They left a 9-year-old boy with a bad leg out in a blizzard on Christmas Eve. "Callum, listen to my voice," I said, forcing a calm I did not feel into my tone. "Stay inside the gas station. Do not go outside. Put the person who gave you the phone on the line." A moment later, a woman's voice came through, hesitant and laced with anger. "Hello? Are you the father?" "Yes," I said, already sprinting toward my beat-up pickup truck. "My name is Gideon. Thank you for keeping him inside. Where are you?" "Route 89, the old Sinclair station. We are the only thing open for 10 miles. I saw them push him out of the car. I have it all on my security cameras. Mister, your boy is freezing." "I am on my way," I said, my voice dropping an octave. Do not let anyone else near him. I threw my truck into gear and slammed on the gas, the tires spinning on the icy asphalt before catching. The heater was blasting, but I felt freezing cold. Fan Tu Bao Tong Noi Dao 1402. The drive should have taken 30 minutes. But with the snow blinding my headlights and the roads buried in white, it felt like a lifetime. I gripped the steering wheel, staring out into the darkness, and the memories I had tried to bury came flooding back. It is funny how betrayal does not just happen all at once. It is a slow drip, a museum of pain that you walk through your whole life, pretending the exhibits do not hurt. I was always the invisible child. Desmond was the golden boy. When we were growing up, if Desmond got a B on a test, my parents threw a dinner party. If I got an A, Orson would just nod and tell me not to get cocky. When I was 18, I moved out and got a job washing cars, eventually working my way up to a mechanic. I never asked them for a dime. Desmond went to a private university, dropped out, and started a tech company that made zero profit. When his app was failing, Orson and Beatrix drained $50,000 from their retirement fund to bail him out. They called it an investment in his brilliant future. When my wife got sick, the hospital bills piled up. I worked 3 jobs, sleeping 2 hours a night. We were drowning. I swallowed my pride, drove to my parents' house, and asked Orson for a loan. Just $500. Enough to buy groceries and keep the heat on for the month. Orson looked at me from his leather recliner, swirled his scotch, and said, "Gideon, if we bail you out, you will never learn financial responsibility. You need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. $500 for food. Denied. $50,000 for a fake app. Granted. I should have walked away then. But when my wife passed, Callum was so small. He asked about his grandparents. He asked why he didn't have a big family like the kids at school. So, like an idiot, I kept the door open. I brought him to Christmas dinners, to Thanksgiving, pretending we were part of the picture. But the poison just transferred to the next generation. Desmond married a woman named Dahlia, someone who looked at people based on the price tag of their shoes. They had no kids, so they treated my parents' money like their own personal piggy bank. My parents worshipped the ground Desmond walked on. When the holidays rolled around, Desmond would get imported watches. Callum would get clearance rack socks. Last year, Orson and Beatrix bought Desmond a brand new iPad just because he mentioned his old one was slow. When it was time for Callum to open his gift, they handed him a used coloring book. I am not exaggerating. Some of the pages were already scribbled on. They said they found it in the basement and thought it would keep him quiet. I swallowed the rage every time because Callum would just smile and say, "Thank you, Grandma." He was so desperate for their love. He thought if he was just quiet enough, good enough, they would finally see him. The heater in my truck roared, bringing me back to the present. The snow was coming down harder, covering the road in a thick, treacherous blanket. I hit the steering wheel with my fist. Hard. My knuckles throbbed, but I welcomed the pain. I had let them treat us like garbage for decades. I justified it by saying family is family. But pushing my crippled son out of a car in a snowstorm? Telling him to walk home? Telling him he was a burden? That was the end of the line. The quiet, obedient son died on that icy road. What was born in his place was a father who was going to burn their entire world to the ground. Fan 3 Kuok Jai Q Va Loi Noi Doi Xe Hoa 1300. 2. The neon sign of the Sinclair gas station flickered through the heavy snow like a dying beacon. I parked my truck sideways across the icy lot, leaving the engine running, and threw open the door before it was even in park. I burst through the glass doors. The bells chimed wildly. Callum! He was sitting on a milk crate near the space heater behind the counter. He looked so small. He was wearing his thin winter jacket, shivering violently, clutching a paper cup of hot chocolate. The moment he saw me, his eyes widened, and he tried to stand up, but his bad leg gave out. I crossed the store in 3 massive strides, dropping to my knees and catching him before he hit the linoleum floor. I wrapped my arms around him, pulling him tightly against my chest. He buried his face in my greasy shoulder and finally let out the sobs he had been holding in. "I am sorry, Dad," he cried, his small hands gripping my shirt. I did not mean to make them mad. My leg was hurting, and I asked Uncle Desmond to turn down the radio because I had a headache. Then he got really mad. He said I was a mistake and a burden. I am sorry. Do not apologize, I whispered fiercely, pressing a kiss to his cold forehead. You did nothing wrong, Callum. Nothing. Do you hear me? You are perfect. They are the ones who are broken. I looked up. Standing behind the counter was a woman in her early 20s, wearing a blue uniform shirt with the name tag Rowan. Her arms were crossed, and she looked like she was ready to go to war. Are you the one who called me? I asked, my voice shaking with gratitude. Yeah, Rowan said, her jaw tight. I was out back emptying the trash when that fancy black SUV pulled up. I watched the guy in the driver's seat shove the kid out, threw his backpack right into a snowbank. The older woman in the passenger seat leaned out and yelled something about walking home to build character. Then they peeled out, almost hit the pumps. I felt a muscle jumping in my jaw. Do you have cameras? 4 of them, Rowan said without missing a beat. High definition. Got the license plate, the faces, the whole thing. I already copied the footage onto a flash drive for you. Figured you might need it. She tossed a small silver USB drive onto the counter. Rowan, I said, picking it up like it was a gold bar. I owe you my life. Just take care of the kid, she replied softly. I picked Callum up in my arms. He was 9, but he felt so light. I carried him out to the truck, buckled him into the passenger seat, and cranked the heat up as high as it would go. I wrapped my heavy winter coat around him. He leaned his head against the window, his eyes drooping from exhaustion and trauma. I shut the door, walked around to the driver's side, and pulled my phone out of my pocket. The snow was falling in thick flakes, melting against my hot skin. I found Desmond's contact and hit call. It rang 3 times before he picked up. Yo, Gideon. Desmond's voice boomed through the speaker. In the background, I could hear loud music, clinking glasses, and the unmistakable sound of a high-end resort party. Desmond, I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. Where is my son? There was a slight pause, just a fraction of a second, before the lie rolled smoothly off his tongue. What do you mean, bro? Callum is fast asleep at Mom and Dad's house. Mom tucked him in an hour ago. We are just hitting the lodge for some pre-Christmas drinks. Everything is totally fine. He lied, without hesitation. He thought Callum had no phone, no money, and no way to reach me. He assumed my 9-year-old boy would try to walk the 10 miles back to my shop in a blizzard, or find a shed to curl up in like a stray dog. Is Mom there? I asked. Yeah, hold on, Desmond yelled over the music. A second later, Beatrix's voice came on. Gideon? Why are you bothering us? We are on vacation. Just checking on Callum, I said, my grip on the phone tightening until my knuckles turned white. He is asleep, she snapped. We left him plenty of leftovers in the fridge. Do not call again until after the holidays, Gideon. You are always interrupting our family time. Click. She hung up. I stood in the freezing snow, staring at the black screen of my phone. They had no idea. They had no idea that I already had Callum. They had no idea about the security footage. They thought I was still the invisible punching bag they could discard whenever it suited them. But things were different now. They crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. You want to pretend my son does not exist? I am going to make sure the entire world knows exactly what you are. Fan 4 Quiet Din Lan Lung 1302. The drive back to our small, 2-bedroom apartment was silent. The storm raged outside, burying the city in a thick layer of white, but inside the cab of my truck, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Callum had fallen asleep, his breathing ragged and uneven. Every time we hit a bump in the road, he would flinch and mumble apologies in his sleep. Hearing my son apologize to thin air for existing broke whatever last remaining tether I had to my family. When we finally got home, I carried him inside. The apartment was not much: second-hand furniture, a tiny kitchen, and a small Christmas tree I had bought on sale at the grocery store. But it was warm, and it was safe. I laid him down on his bed, carefully taking off his damp shoes. He stirred, blinking up at me in the dim light of his bedside lamp. "Dad?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I am right here, buddy," I said, pulling the thick quilt up to his chin. He looked at his hands, his lower lip trembling. "Dad, am I really a burden? Uncle Desmond said my leg makes me useless. He said I ruined their $10,000 vacation because I could not walk fast enough through the snow." I felt something hot and sharp behind my ribs. It took everything in me not to punch a hole straight through the drywall. Instead, I sat on the edge of his bed, took his small hands in mine, and looked him dead in the eye. "Callum, listen to me," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You are smart, you are brave, and you are my whole world. Your uncle is a miserable, empty man. People like him try to make others feel small because they have nothing real inside themselves. You are not a burden. You are my son. And I promise you, nobody is ever going to treat you like that again." He nodded slowly, a single tear rolling down his cheek before his eyes drifted shut. I sat there until his breathing deepened into a deep, exhausted sleep. I walked out into the living room and shut the door behind me. The apartment was dead quiet. I walked into the kitchen, turned on the coffee maker, and poured myself a mug of black coffee. I stood by the window, watching the snow fall over the streetlights. I thought about Orson and Beatrix. I thought about how they justified every cruel thing they ever did under the guise of tough love. I thought about Desmond, sipping champagne in a luxury ski lodge, laughing with his fake friends while his nephew was supposed to be freezing to death on a highway. They thought they got away with it. They thought I would just yell, maybe cause a scene, and then back down like I always did because family is family. Not this time. I pulled my phone out and scrolled through my contacts until I found her name, Ms. Maeve. She was an old friend of mine from high school, someone who clawed her way out of our rundown neighborhood and became one of the most ruthless family law attorneys in the state. She was sharp, calculating, and she hated bullies as much as I did. It was 2 in the morning on Christmas Day. I hit the call button anyway. She picked up on the 4th ring, her voice groggy but alert. "Gideon, tell me someone is dead, or I am billing you for this call." "Maeve," I said, my voice flat, devoid of any emotion. "I need your brain, right now." The tone of my voice must have sobered her up instantly. I heard the rustling of sheets. "Talk to me. What happened?" I told her everything. The overnight shift, dropping Callum off, the phone call, the gas station, the freezing snow, the security footage from Rowan, and the phone call where Desmond and my mother blatantly lied about Callum's whereabouts, proving they had abandoned him on purpose. Maeve did not gasp. She did not offer empty sympathies. She let out a long, slow breath. "You have the security footage?" "On a flash drive," I said. "High definition. And you have the call logs showing when you called them?" "Yes." "Gideon," Maeve said, her voice dropping into a strictly professional, deadly serious register. "They abandoned a disabled minor in life-threatening weather conditions, and then actively lied about his location to his legal guardian. This is not just a family dispute. This is child endangerment. This is a felony." "I know," I said, staring out at the snow. "I want to destroy them, Maeve. I do not want an apology. I want them to pay." "Okay," she said. "Here is what we do. You do not text them. You do not call them. You do not wish them a Merry Christmas. While they are sipping hot toddies on the slopes, we are going to build a cage so tight they will never see the sun again." I took a sip of my bitter coffee. "Tell me what to do." Fan 5 Kitch Hot Hethong 1402. The rest of Christmas Day was a blur of calculated, silent action. While families across the country were opening presents and eating turkey, I was sitting in a sterile, brightly lit police precinct. I left Callum at the apartment with my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, a retired nurse who doted on him. I told her I had to sort out some emergency paperwork. I walked into the precinct and asked to speak to a detective. The desk sergeant looked annoyed, probably wishing he was home with his kids. But when I calmly stated that I needed to report a case of child abandonment and reckless endangerment, his demeanor shifted. I sat in an interrogation room with a Detective Miller. He was a tired-looking guy with bags under his eyes, holding a notepad. "Walk me through it, Mr. Vance," Miller said. I did not use emotional language. I used the principle of showing, not telling, laying out the facts like bricks in a wall. I gave him the timeline, the exact address of the gas station, the weather reports showing sub-zero temperatures and blizzard warnings. And finally, I slid the silver USB drive across the metal table. "This is security footage from the Sinclair station on Route 89, I said. "It shows my brother, Desmond Vance, and my parents, Orson and Beatrix Vance, physically forcing my 9-year-old son out of their vehicle. It shows them throwing his belongings into the snow and driving away. My son has a medical condition affecting his leg. If the gas station attendant had not taken him in, he would have frozen to death." Detective Miller plugged the drive into his laptop. I sat in silence and watched the glow of the screen reflect on his face. I saw his jaw tighten. I saw his eyes narrow. He watched the footage twice. When he looked up, the exhaustion in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, professional fury. "I am opening a criminal investigation immediately," Miller said, closing the laptop. "We will be contacting the local authorities near their ski resort. Did you notify Child Protective Services?" "That is my next stop," I replied. I walked out into the freezing air and made the call to CPS. Making a report against your own parents and your own flesh and blood brother is a strange feeling. Society tells you that family is sacred. But there is nothing sacred about leaving a disabled child in the snow. I answered the caseworker's questions with robotic precision. Yes, the child was abandoned. Yes, the guardians left the state. Yes, the child is currently safe with his biological father. When I finished, I sat in the cab of my truck and called Maeve. "Police report filed. CPS case opened." I told her. "Good," Maeve said. "Now comes the hardest part, Gideon. You have to play dead." "What do you mean?" "They booked that ski trip for 5 days. They think Callum is either walking around aimlessly, hiding in a shed, or maybe he found his way back to your shop. They do not care. If you yell at them now, they will get defensive, hire lawyers, and try to spin the story. They will say it was a misunderstanding, that Callum ran away, that they were looking for him." I gripped the steering wheel. "So I do nothing?" "You do absolutely nothing," Maeve said, her voice sharp. "Let them enjoy their vacation. Let them post their happy family photos on Facebook. Let them dig their own grave so deep that when the dirt caves in, they will not even be able to scream. Let them believe they got away with it. Because when they come back, the police will be waiting." I hung up the phone. The silence in the truck was heavy. It went against every instinct I had as a father to not drive up to that resort and drag Desmond out by his collar. But Maeve was right. Anger feels good for a second, but strategy wins the war. If you ever wonder what it is like to watch a train heading toward a broken bridge, knowing the people on board deserve the crash, stick around. If you are feeling my anger, hit the like button, because what happens next is the definition of sweet, silent karma. I drove home, opened the door to my apartment, and saw Callum sitting on the floor with Mrs. Higgins, playing a board game. He looked up and gave me a small, hesitant smile. The fear was still there in his eyes, the lingering doubt of a child who was told he was not worth keeping. I sat down on the floor next to him, ruffled his hair, and rolled the dice. The clock was ticking. The trap was set. Now we just had to wait for the rats to walk into it. Fan 6 su mat tich ao va bang chung vang 1202. 1 day passed. Then 2. Then 3. The silence from my family was deafening. Not a single text message. Not a single missed call. They did not call to check if Callum made it to their empty house. They did not call me to see if he had miraculously walked 10 miles through a blizzard to reach my garage. For 4 straight days, my parents and my brother completely erased the existence of a 9-year-old boy from their minds. While they were absent, I kept Callum close. We watched movies, we ate junk food, and we talked. I told him stories about his mother, about how brave she was, and how much she loved him. Slowly, I watched the tension leave his small shoulders. He realized he was safe. On the 5th day, my phone finally buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was a text message from Desmond. The vacation was over. They were supposed to be arriving back at my parents' house. Desmond. Yo, where are you hiding the kid? I stared at the screen. No greeting. No concern. I did not reply. I took a screenshot. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Another text came through, this time frantic. Desmond. Pick up the damn phone, Gideon. There are 2 cop cars parked in Mom and Dad's driveway. What the hell did you tell them? I took another screenshot. I could picture it perfectly. Orson and Beatrix pulling up in their luxury SUV, exhausted from skiing and drinking, only to find the flashing red and blue lights of reality waiting for them. My phone started blowing up. Missed call from Orson. Missed call from Beatrix. For missed calls from Desmond. They were panicking. The police were knocking on their door, asking about a child they had abandoned 5 days ago. A child they could not produce. A child they had not spoken to in nearly a week. I forwarded everything to Maeve. She replied instantly, keep ignoring them. The police have the footage. They are currently being questioned. An hour went by. Then, my phone pinged with a text from Desmond. It was the golden ticket. The absolute peak of arrogant stupidity. In his panic and rage after the police left, Desmond's toxic filter completely broke down. He typed exactly what was in his dark, twisted heart, completely forgetting that text messages are legal documents. Desmond, you are a piece of trash for sending the cops to Mom and Dad's house. Keep the damn burden. You and that crippled kid just ruin everything. Mom and Dad were right, we should have never let you bring him around. Do not ever contact us again. I read the message 3 times. A cold, victorious smile spread across my face. I took a screenshot, backed it up to my cloud drive, and emailed it directly to Maeve and Detective Miller. There it is, I thought. Physical, undeniable proof. The motive, the confession, the utter lack of remorse. I finally typed a reply. Just 4 words. Gideon. See you in court. I blocked their numbers immediately after. For the next 6 months, the silence was beautiful. The criminal investigation moved forward. CPS officially banned Orson, Beatrix, and Desmond from having any contact with Callum. Desmond's startup company started bleeding money because he spent all his time fighting legal battles and dodging child endangerment charges. My parents were shunned by their country club friends once the rumors of what they did leaked out. Life was peaceful. I was working hard, Callum's leg was getting better with physical therapy, and we were happy. We did not need them. We never needed them. But fate has a really funny way of balancing the scales. They thought abandoning Callum was the end of their problems. They thought they had successfully cut the burden out of their perfect, wealthy lives. They had absolutely no idea that 6 months later, a letter with a wax seal from a high-end estate attorney was going to land in their mailbox. A letter that would reveal a secret my late wife's father had kept hidden for decades. A letter containing a number so massive, so incredibly huge, that it would drive my toxic family completely insane. They threw Callum away for nothing. But when they found out he was suddenly worth $2.5 million, the real war began. And this time I was holding the nuclear launch keys. 6 months passed. 6 beautiful, quiet months without a single toxic word, manipulative text message, or passive-aggressive comment from the people who shared my last name. Spring had melted away the bitter winter, and the heavy snow that once threatened to freeze my son to death was nothing more than a memory. Life settled into a steady, peaceful rhythm. My auto shop was thriving, pulling in more heavy-duty freight contracts than I could handle alone, which allowed me to hire 2 extra mechanics. I was working regular hours again, coming home while the sun was still in the sky. Callum was healing, both physically and emotionally. His leg was getting stronger with every physical therapy session, but more importantly, the haunted, fearful look in his eyes was fading. He started laughing again. He started asking for things, little things like a specific brand of cereal or to watch a certain movie, without immediately apologizing for being a bother. We were a family of 2 and we were whole. The criminal investigation regarding the Christmas Eve abandonment was moving at the painfully slow pace of the justice system, but it was moving. CPS had strictly forbidden Orson, Beatrix, and Desmond from coming anywhere near my son. For half a year, they honored that order not out of respect for the law, but out of sheer arrogance. They truly believed they were the victims. They thought they had shed a massive burden and could go back to their pristine country club lives without a second thought. But karma is not a myth. It is a very patient debt collector. It was a Tuesday afternoon in early June. I was underneath a semi-truck, covered in grease, listening to classic rock on the shop radio, when my cell phone buzzed in my pocket. I wiped my hands on a rag and pulled it out. It was Maeve. I had not spoken to her in a few weeks, as the legal side of things had been mostly quiet. I answered, expecting an update on the court date for the child endangerment charges. "Hey, Maeve, tell me you have a court date for the Christmas incident." "Gideon," Maeve said. Her voice sounded different. It was not her usual sharp, sarcastic tone. It was incredibly serious, almost breathless. "Are you sitting down? I am lying on a creeper under a 10-ton truck," I replied, wiping sweat from my forehead. "What is going on? Did they do something?" "I just received a call from an estate attorney representing a firm in New York," Maeve said slowly. "Gideon, do you remember your late wife's father? Arthur." I frowned, staring up at the greasy underbelly of the truck. "Arthur? Yeah, barely. He was a brilliant engineer, held a bunch of patents, but he was a complete recluse. He cut off contact with my wife years before we even met. They had a massive falling out. When she passed away, I tried to track him down to let him know, but I hit a dead end." "Why? Did he die?" "He passed away 3 weeks ago," Maeve confirmed. "And Gideon, he never forgot his daughter. He kept tabs on her and he kept tabs on Callum. Because Arthur had no other living relatives, he left his entire estate to his only biological grandson." I rolled out from under the truck and stood up, my knees popping. "Okay, what are we talking about here? A house? Some savings?" Maeve paused. The silence on the line was deafening over the sound of the air compressors in the shop. "Gideon, Arthur left a trust fund for Callum. The total liquidated value of his patents, investments, and properties has been calculated. The trust is worth exactly $2.5 million. The wrench I was holding slipped from my hand and clattered loudly onto the concrete floor. My heart stopped beating for a full second. $2.5 million. It was a number so large it did not even sound real. It sounded like a lottery jackpot, not something that happens to a mechanic with grease-stained hands. $2.5 million, I repeated, my voice hollow. "Are you serious? Maeve, this is a joke, right?" "It is real," she said firmly. "It is locked in an ironclad trust. But Gideon, there is a massive problem. A critical error in the notification process." The cold dread started to seep back into my veins. "What problem?" "Because you and your late wife moved so many times during her illness, the private investigator Arthur's lawyers hired used old tax records to establish next of kin addresses. They sent the official legal notification letter regarding the inheritance to you. But they also sent a duplicate notification to the alternate family address listed on Callum's old medical files. The address where you used to receive your mail when you first moved out." My blood ran completely cold. "My parents' house." "Yes," Maeve said, her voice tight. "Orson and Beatrix received a certified letter this morning stating that their grandson, the boy they left in a blizzard, is the sole heir to a $2.5 million fortune. And Gideon. The letter states that because Callum is a minor, his legal guardian will have full administrative control over the trust fund until he turns 25. I squeezed my eyes shut. I knew my family. I knew exactly what they were. They did not care about a child's life. But money was their god. Money was the only language they spoke. "They know," I whispered. "They know," Maeve confirmed. "And given Desmond's financial situation, they are going to come for him. Prepare yourself, Gideon. The war did not end in December. It is about to start right now." Fan 8 Bay Kai Bay Kichdong 1402. Maeve was not wrong. It took exactly 24 hours for the venomous snakes in my family to completely change their skin. To understand why they reacted so violently, you have to understand the reality of Desmond's life. He played the part of a successful tech CEO brilliantly. He drove a European sports car, wore tailored suits, and bought his wife, Dahlia, diamonds the size of grapes. But it was all a house of cards built on toxic debt. His company was hemorrhaging money. In a desperate attempt to save his golden boy's reputation, my father, Orson, had quietly taken out a massive second mortgage on their family home. They were drowning in debt, completely desperate, and suddenly, they were informed that the little boy they had thrown away like trash was holding a winning lottery ticket worth $2.5 million. The first attack came from Dahlia. I was at the shop when I got a frantic call from the principal at Callum's elementary school. "Mr. Vance," the principal said, sounding alarmed, "there is a woman here claiming to be your son's aunt. She is trying to pull him out of class to take him to a luxury toy store. She brought a massive basket of expensive chocolates and a brand new video game console." I dropped everything and drove to the school like a madman. When I walked into the main office, Dahlia was standing there in a designer trench coat, arguing with the receptionist. She had a fake, sickeningly sweet smile plastered on her face. "Dahlia," I growled, my voice echoing in the quiet office. She spun around, feigning joy. "Gideon, oh thank goodness. I was just telling this lovely lady that it has been far too long since I saw my favorite nephew, Desmond, and I just want to spoil him a little. Family is everything, right?" I stepped between her and the door leading to the classrooms. I looked down at her, not hiding my absolute disgust. "You do not have a nephew. If you ever come within 100 feet of my son again, I will have you arrested for trespassing and harassment. Get out." Her fake smile slipped, revealing the desperate greed underneath. She glared at me, grabbed her expensive purse, and stormed out. That was just the beginning. By that evening, my phone, which had been silent for 6 months, exploded. The text messages flooded in, painting a picture of a loving family that made me want to vomit. "Orson, Gideon, son, your mother and I have been doing a lot of soul searching. We miss you and Callum so much. Please let us come over. We bought him a new bicycle. Beatrix, my sweet boy, a family should not be apart. We forgive you for overreacting at Christmas. Let us put the past behind us. We want to see our precious grandson." I read the texts with a cold, hollow feeling in my chest. They were not talking to me. They were talking to the $2.5 million. The climax of their desperation happened the next morning. I was unlocking the front gate of my auto shop when a sleek, black European sports car aggressively pulled into the driveway, blocking the entrance. The door swung open, and Desmond stepped out. He looked awful. His designer suit was wrinkled. He had dark circles under his eyes, and he reeked of stale alcohol and desperation. He marched up to me, trying to project the old arrogant confidence he always used to bully me. "Gideon," Desmond said, clapping his hands together. "Bro, we need to talk. Move your car, Desmond, or I am towing it," I said, not even looking at him as I unchained the heavy iron gates. "Look, I know you are mad about the winter trip," Desmond said, waving his hand dismissively as if leaving a child to freeze to death was just a minor misunderstanding. Tempers ran high. I was stressed about work. Mom and Dad were tired. "But we are blood, Gideon. You cannot keep my nephew away from me." I turned to face him. "You called him a crippled burden. You told him to walk 10 miles in a blizzard. You are dead to me." Desmond's face twisted into an ugly snarl. The fake brotherly love vanished instantly. "Do not play stupid with me, you grease monkey. I know about the trust fund. I saw the letter. $2.5 million. You cannot manage that kind of money. You are a high school graduate who changes oil for a living. That money needs to be managed by someone who understands finance. I can invest it. I can grow it. We can share the guardianship." I stared at him. The sheer audacity was almost impressive. He wanted to use my son's inheritance to bail out his failing company. "You want to manage Callum's money?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. "It is the only logical choice," Desmond sneered, mistaking my calmness for submission. "Mom and Dad agree. We are willing to drop all the bad blood if you just sign over joint guardianship to me and Dad. We can handle the trust. You can go back to your little wrenches. I stepped closer to him. He was taller than me, but he instinctively took a step back. Desmond, I said, looking him dead in the eyes, I would rather burn that money in a barrel than let you touch a single cent of it. Do not ever come near me or my son again. I turned my back on him. Desmond screamed at the top of his lungs, his voice cracking with rage. You are going to regret this, Gideon. You are an unfit parent. We will take you to court. We will take that kid and we will take that money. You have nothing. I walked into my shop and closed the heavy steel door behind me. I pulled out my phone and called Maeve. They took the bait, I said. Desmond just threatened to sue me for custody to get the trust fund. Perfect, Maeve said, and I could hear the predatory smile in her voice. Let them file the paperwork. Let them walk right into the slaughterhouse. Fan 9 Kuokchien Toa on Bat Dao 1402 they actually did it. Blinded by greed and the desperate need to save themselves from financial ruin, Orson, Beatrix, and Desmond pooled whatever credit they had left and hired a bulldog family law attorney. Within a week, I was served with a massive stack of legal documents. They filed an emergency petition for full custody of Callum, completely bypassing the joint custody threat Desmond had made. They wanted everything. I sat in Maeve's high-rise office, looking over the documents. The lies printed on those pages were so outrageous they were almost comical. According to their high-priced lawyer, I was an abusive, neglectful father who forced my son to live in squalor. They claimed my auto shop was a toxic, dangerous environment. They painted a picture of Orson and Beatrix as wealthy, stable, loving grandparents who could provide a world-class education and medical care for Callum. Desmond was listed as a successful technology CEO who would act as a mentor and financial advisor to the boy. They even twisted the Christmas Eve incident. In their official statement, they claimed Callum had run away from the gas station while they were inside paying, and they had spent hours driving around in the snow frantically looking for him. They claimed I was a bitter, jealous brother who had manipulated the police into believing they abandoned him. This is insane, I said, tossing the papers onto Maeve's glass desk. They are literally rewriting history. They think the judge is just going to take their word over mine because they have money? That is exactly what they think, Maeve said, leaning back in her leather chair. They are relying on the classic class warfare tactic. They want to paint you as a poor, uneducated blue-collar worker who is only interested in the trust fund to fund a lavish lifestyle. They are projecting their own greed onto you. So how do we stop them? I asked, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. I knew the truth, but courts could be unpredictable. What if a judge actually believed their polished lies? We do not stop them, Maeve said, her eyes flashing with a dangerous brilliance. We let them build their beautiful, fragile glass house, right in the middle of the courtroom. We let their lawyer talk about how loving they are. We let them testify under oath about how much they care for Callum and how they would never hurt him. We let them commit perjury on the public record. And then, I asked. And then, Maeve smiled, tapping a silver USB drive on her desk. The exact same drive Rowan, the gas station attendant, had given me 6 months ago. We throw a brick right through the glass. For the next month, we prepared in silence. I did not retaliate when Desmond posted passive-aggressive statuses on social media about rescuing family from toxic situations. I did not engage when my mother left voicemails crying about how much she missed her darling grandson. I focused entirely on my son and my business. I sat down with Callum one evening. He was coloring at the kitchen table. Callum, I said gently, your grandparents and your uncle are trying to cause some trouble. We have to go talk to a judge soon. I just need you to know that you are never, ever going to leave me. I will not let them take you. He looked up at me, his eyes wide but remarkably calm. He had grown so much stronger in the last few months. I know, Dad. They do not love me. They only love money. You are my real family. Hearing my 9-year-old son sum up the tragic reality of my bloodline with such simple clarity broke my heart. But it also fueled my resolve. I was going to destroy them, The day of the hearing arrived. The sky was overcast, casting a gray, serious light through the massive windows of the courthouse. I wore my only good suit. It was not tailored like Desmond's, but it was clean, and my hands, though scarred from years of mechanic work, were steady. Maeve walked beside me, carrying a sleek leather briefcase. She looked like a general walking onto a battlefield where she already knew she had planted landmines. We entered the courtroom. Orson, Beatrix, and Desmond were already seated at the petitioner's table. They looked like they were attending a country club brunch. My mother wore pearls. My father wore a navy blazer. Desmond wore a smirk. Their lawyer, an older, aggressive-looking man named Mr. Sterling, gave me a look of pure condescension. They thought they were walking into a coronation. They thought the money was already theirs. They did not know I was holding a sledgehammer behind my back. Thank you for making it this far into the story. If you are ready to see this toxic family get exactly what they deserve, drop a comment with the letter W down below. W stands for win. For all of you amazing listeners who stuck around, I will be hearting and replying to every single comment with that keyword. Now let's get back into the courtroom. Fan 10 Cohen Cockvok Tran 1300 to the judge. A stern woman named Honorable Davis took her seat at the bench. She looked over her glasses at the courtroom, her expression giving nothing away. All right, Judge Davis said, her voice echoing in the wood-paneled room. We are here regarding the emergency petition for custody and conservatorship of the minor child, Callum Vance, and his associated trust. Mr. Sterling, you represent the petitioners. You may begin. Mr. Sterling stood up, buttoning his expensive suit jacket. He paced back and forth, putting on a spectacular theatrical performance. He spoke for 20 minutes about the deep, unbreakable bond between Orson, Beatrix, and their grandson. He spoke about Desmond's success as a technology entrepreneur. And then he turned his sights on me. Your Honor, Sterling said, pointing a manicured finger at me. The respondent, Gideon Vance, is a manual laborer. He works grueling hours in a hazardous environment. He cannot provide the cultural, educational, or financial stability required for a child of Callum's new circumstances. Furthermore, the respondent has a history of vindictive behavior, evidenced by his false police report claiming my clients abandoned the child on Christmas Eve. It was a simple misunderstanding, a child wandering off, twisted by a bitter brother to sever family ties. Desmond looked back at me and actually winked. My parents nodded sadly, playing the victims perfectly. Judge Davis turned to Maeve. Ms. Maeve, your response? Maeve stood up slowly. She did not pace. She did not yell. She walked calmly to the center of the room. Your Honor, Maeve began, her voice crisp and authoritative. Opposing counsel has painted a beautiful picture of a loving, wealthy family trying to rescue a child from poverty. It is a compelling story. Unfortunately, it is a complete fabrication built entirely on perjury. Sterling jumped up. Objection. Inflammatory language. Overruled, Judge Davis said, leaning forward, clearly intrigued. Continue, Ms. Maeve. Mr. Sterling claims the Christmas Eve incident was a misunderstanding, Maeve said, picking up a folder from our table. He claims the child wandered off. I would like to submit Exhibit A into evidence. This is high-definition security footage from the Sinclair gas station on Route 89, dated December 24th, at 10:45 at night. Maeve handed a tablet to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. At the same time, she connected her laptop to the courtroom monitor. The screen flickered to life. The entire courtroom watched in dead silence. The video clearly showed the black SUV pulling up to the gas pumps in the middle of a raging blizzard. It showed Desmond getting out of the driver's seat, storming around to the back door, and forcefully pulling a terrified, limping 9-year-old boy out of the car. It showed Desmond throwing a backpack into a snowbank. It showed Beatrix leaning out the window, pointing a finger at the crying child. And then, it showed them driving away, leaving the boy standing alone in the freezing dark. The color completely drained from Desmond's face. He looked like he had just been shot. Orson gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. Beatrix gasped and put her hand over her mouth. "As you can see, Your Honor," Maeve said, her voice echoing like a judge reading a death sentence. "There was no wandering off. There was no misunderstanding. They forcefully ejected a disabled minor into a life-threatening blizzard. This is completely out of context." Sterling sputtered, clearly blindsided by evidence his clients had lied to him about. "I have more context," Maeve continued ruthlessly, ignoring him. She pulled out a stack of printed papers. "I submit Exhibit B. These are the text messages sent by Desmond Vance to my client 5 days after the abandonment, when he realized the police were involved. I will read a direct quote from Mr. Desmond Vance. 'Keep the damn burden. You and that crippled kid just ruin everything. Mom and Dad were right. We should have never let you bring him around.'" Maeve handed the printed screenshots to the judge. Judge Davis read the text. When she looked up, her face was a mask of absolute fury. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. She looked at Desmond and my parents not as people, but as absolute monsters. "Mr. Sterling," Judge Davis said, her voice dangerously quiet, "did you know about this footage or these communications before you filed this petition?" Sterling looked physically sick. He took a step away from his own clients. "No, Your Honor. I was not informed." "Your Honor," Maeve struck the final blow. "These people did not care if Callum Vance lived or died in the snow 6 months ago. They have not contacted him once in half a year. They only filed this petition because they received accidental notification of a $2.5 million trust fund. This is not about family. This is about greed, fraud, and a desperate attempt to steal a child's inheritance." Judge Davis slammed her gavel down so hard I thought the wood would splinter. "Petition denied with extreme prejudice," she practically yelled. "Mr. Vance, you will retain sole, permanent custody of your son. You will have absolute and total administrative control over the trust fund. Furthermore, I am issuing a permanent, legally binding restraining order against Orson, Beatrix, and Desmond Vance. If any of you come within 500 yards of Gideon or Callum Vance, you will be thrown in a county jail cell. This court is adjourned." It was a total massacre. Fan 11 Ku Mat Trang Va Ku, Twist Thursday BA 1302, the courtroom cleared out, leaving the heavy silence of absolute defeat hanging over the petitioner's table. Desmond was sitting in his chair, staring blankly at the floor, his breathing ragged. Beatrix was sobbing into a tissue, while Orson looked like he had aged 20 years in 20 minutes. Their high-priced lawyer had already packed his briefcase and walked out without saying a single word to them. Maeve packed her things, gave me a satisfied nod, and walked out to the hallway to wait for me. I stood up, buttoned my suit jacket, and walked over to their table. I did not feel angry anymore. I felt cold, calculating, and entirely in control. I had played the role of the invisible, worthless mechanic my entire life. It was time to show them exactly who they had been messing with. "Gideon, please," Orson croaked, looking up at me with terrified eyes. "You have to understand, we panicked. Desmond is in financial trouble. The startup is failing. If he does not get an influx of cash, he is going to lose everything. The bank is going to take this house." I looked down at the man who had denied me $500 for groceries when my wife was dying. "I know," I said calmly. "I know exactly how much debt Desmond is in." Desmond's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and pulled out a single manila folder. I tossed it onto the table in front of them. It landed with a heavy thud. This was the final piece of the puzzle. The ironic link that Maeve and I had discovered during our financial background checks in preparation for the trial. "You guys really thought I was just a grease monkey changing oil all these years, didn't you?" I asked, a dark smile playing on my lips. "You never bothered to actually look into my life. You never asked what I was building because you assumed I was a failure." Desmond opened the folder with shaking hands. He stared at the documents inside, his eyes widening in pure horror. "My auto shop is not just a repair garage," I explained, watching the realization crush them. I own a heavy logistics and commercial transport company. We service the largest freight fleets in the tri-state area. I employ 30 people. I make a very, very comfortable living. So comfortable, in fact, that my holding company invests in distressed debt portfolios. I leaned over the table, bringing my face inches from Desmond's. 3 weeks ago, when you filed this absurd custody lawsuit, I made a few phone calls. I whispered. Your primary angel investor, the venture capital firm that was holding the massive, high-interest loans keeping your fake tech company afloat? They wanted out. They were desperate to offload your toxic debt. No, Desmond gasped, dropping the papers. No, you didn't. I did, I said, standing back up straight. My company bought your debt, Desmond. I own your loans. I am your primary creditor. Beatrix let out a wailing cry, burying her face in her hands. Orson looked like he was having a heart attack. Tomorrow morning, I said, my voice echoing in the empty courtroom. My lawyers will be calling in those loans. Since you have defaulted on your performance metrics for 3 consecutive quarters, I have the legal right to demand immediate repayment in full. When you cannot pay, which I know you cannot, we will seize your company's assets. And since you, Dad, used the family home as collateral to secure Desmond's last line of credit, I let the sentence hang in the air. You are going to take our house, Orson whispered, tears finally spilling down his wrinkled face. Gideon, you are our son. You would make your own parents homeless. You told my disabled 9-year-old son to walk 10 miles in a blizzard because he was a burden, I replied, my voice completely devoid of mercy. You threw us away. Well, guess what? You are a burden to my bottom line. Pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. I turned my back on them. Desmond let out a pathetic, guttural sob, begging me to stop, promising he would do anything. My mother screamed my name. I did not stop. I did not look back. I walked out of those heavy oak doors and left them to drown in the ocean of ruin they had dug with their own 2 hands. The golden child had fallen. The enabling parents had lost everything. The invisible son had taken the crown. Fan 12 Gwyn Luke moi va duem 1002 a year has passed since that day in the courtroom. If you drive past the old Vance family home today, you will not see my parents' luxury SUV in the driveway. You will see a foreclosure sold sign on the lawn. Orson and Beatrix had to declare bankruptcy. They currently live in a cramped, run-down 2-bedroom rental apartment on the bad side of town. Desmond's tech company was completely liquidated. His fancy cars were repossessed. Dahlia, realizing there was no more money to fund her designer lifestyle, filed for divorce 6 months later and took whatever scraps he had left. Desmond currently works as a mid-level data entry clerk, living in a studio apartment, spending his weekends ignoring calls from debt collectors. As for me and Callum, I am sitting on the bleachers of a sunlit park, holding a hot dog in one hand and my phone in the other, watching my 10-year-old son step up to home plate. His leg is completely healed. He runs, he jumps, and he laughs so loud it echoes across the baseball diamond. He wears a bright red jersey, and when he hits the ball, he looks back at me with a smile so bright it could outshine the sun. He knows about the $2.5 million. I explained it to him simply. The money is locked away in a high-yield, untouchable trust. It will pay for his college, his first home, and whatever dreams he decides to chase. We did not buy a mansion. We did not buy a Ferrari. We just bought peace. Every now and then, I get a letter forwarded to my P.O. box. The handwriting is always my mother's, frantic and begging. She writes about how hard life is, how Orson's health is failing, how Desmond is depressed. She begs me for a loan. She begs me to let them see Callum. She begs for forgiveness. I take those letters, I walk over to the paper shredder in my office, and I feed them to the machine without reading past the first paragraph. I do not feel guilt. I do not feel sadness. I just feel the profound, beautiful silence of a life free from toxic people. Sometimes, blood is not thicker than water. Sometimes, blood is just a toxic poison that you have to drain out of your life if you want to survive. I fought a war to protect my son, and I burned the enemy to ashes. But I have to ask you, the listeners, There are people in my extended family who say I went too far. They say destroying Desmond's company and taking my parents' house was cruel, regardless of what they did to Callum in the snow. They say I should have just taken the money and walked away, instead of crushing them into poverty. What do you think? Did I cross a line by using my financial power to ruin my own parents and brother? Or did I do exactly what a father should do to protect his child and ensure the people who hurt him can never hurt anyone ever again? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Be brutally honest. I read every single one. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. If you found yourself rooting for Callum and me, and if you believe that toxic family members deserve the karma they get, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Share your own stories in the comments if you have ever had to cut off a toxic relative. Stay strong, protect your peace, and I will see you in the next video.